Hey guys, it's Chappie from the Task Force 70 Foundation. I'm here today to talk about why our cops are struggling right now. They're struggling in a bunch of different ways, but we're going to talk about why today. So before we get started, check us out at tf70.org. If you're willing to support us in our mission to support small law enforcement agencies, hit us up at tf70.org/donate. So let's get moving. So guys, the struggle comes from a low level of standards. So mediocrity creates all kinds of issues in the law enforcement world. That mediocrity is created by the institutionalization of government. It kind of started with Teddy Roosevelt and was really brought into its full form during Wilson's administration. But the government was transitioned from being one constitutionally driven to one being institutionally controlled. And at the time, the big brains in the world thought that we could institutionalize everything and make the government smooth and easy and what's best for the citizenry. Turns out that doesn't really work because human nature is human nature. Unfortunately, we're living in the modern law enforcement world with the soup of mediocrity that has left behind. What do I mean by that? Standards is a word that is often used and seldom understood. Standards are twofold. There's two types of standards. There's an internal standard, that's the standard that I hold myself to, and there's an external standard. An external standard is one that, for instance, in the law enforcement world today is upheld by the states. Each state has its own set of standards for what's required in order to be hired and then certified as a law enforcement officer. The institutionalization of government has created this mediocrity because in order to work as an institution, it has to have a minimum standard. That's the minimum standard required for somebody to be certified as a law enforcement officer in our particular circumstance and the subject that we cover. So that's a challenge because there's a large number of people required in a large variety of jurisdictions and communities across even a single state. In the state that I work in, there's hundreds of cities and counties, and each one of their communities has slightly different expectations. However, the standards that the officers are held to are not based upon the expectations of their local community. They're based upon the standards that the government believes, the state government believes is necessary for a person to be a minimally functional law enforcement officer in the state. Now that's important that we understand what that minimum standard is and that there is one. So I am not bad-mouthing minimum state standards. Those are external standards. Those standards flow from the state government down to the local jurisdiction, to the chief of police or the sheriff. The sheriff at that point has to make a choice. He has to choose, or she has to choose, to only maintain the state standard or do what the majority of them do. Even in the small jurisdictions like we serve at Task Force 70, they still have a higher standard than the state minimums. However, they are still required to maintain a balance between community expectations, the resources available, and most importantly in the modern age, the demographics available to them to employ as law enforcement officers. The demographics inside the United States have gotten so much worse over the last 5 years, and it's not just the social media problem or just the economic problem. It's primarily driven by a population problem. Fewer people turn 18 years old every year for the last 4 years. And that trend continues for 6 more years. Fewer people will turn 18 than the year before. Where that creates challenges is that small agency law enforcement agencies don't pay a lot to begin with. So we have a smaller number of people that are available to be employed, and we pay less than similar types of positions. So that creates challenges, right? So that has led to, especially since the medical emergency of 5 years ago, Since then, the standards have continuously dropped at the state level. The law enforcement agencies, and especially the administrative executives in those agencies, are really struggling right now to keep enough people who are minimally qualified at their agency to serve their community at least the expected minimum level that the community wants to be served. That's a challenge. That's a challenge for the administrators. It's a challenge for the officers. It's a pretty serious challenge for the mid-level leadership and management layer in the law enforcement agency. It's challenging for everybody. So those external standards, the standards that we get from the state, probably aren't going to be strengthened anytime soon. So the good news is there are some things that we can control. There are some layers of standards below the external at the internal level that we can drive ourselves. And being Task Force 70, that's what we always focus on, is what we can do ourselves to address these issues. So since we're focusing on what we can do ourselves to address these standards issues, let's talk about what a standard is at the individual level. The standard is, what level do we expect to perform under stress while making good judgment? Those are the things that kind of all blend together to make a good individualized standard. The standard is not really time or performance based. It's a combination of individual performance, the amount of time that reasonably is necessary to perform that task, whether it's shooting, PT, whatever. Those things are based on time for a reason. They're often misused, and we'll get to why here in a little bit. But it's also based on judgment. And judgment is something that has to be developed individually. It's very hard to teach an officer how to make good judgments. That's extremely difficult. That comes through repetition and experience and training. So what we're going to focus on with our individual standards is contextualizing the task. Task Force 70 focuses on our big five things that we're capable of touching. Constitutional judgment is the first one. It's the first one for a reason. So how do I train myself to make good judgments? In combination with experience and repetition, it's education. It's teaching myself. It is studying the topics that I am required to understand almost subconsciously. Things like the Constitution and judicial precedents, state laws, local ordinances and laws, and how our community expects us to enforce this. You're not doing the public any favors by over-enforcing things that the community don't view as critically important. I'm not saying don't enforce the law. I'm saying use some judgment and some prudence, and also under-enforcing things that the community view as vitally important, but you individually don't think aren't that big of a deal. It still doesn't matter. It's what the community expects of us. So that's the first level of standard we need to identify and kind of bake into the cake of all of the individualized standards that we create for ourselves. The next step is in performance. In physical activities, especially athletic physical activities, things like marksmanship, breaching, medical skills, tactics, physical fitness, manhunts, foot pursuits, things like that. Whatever the minimum standard is, I guarantee you it's too low. Your community expects you to be able to perform at this level. If the state mandates this level, I don't care what the state mandates. As long as the guys meet it, it gives us a baseline to work from. Remember, the exterior standards are always the foundation of our personal standards. They are not the end point. What we don't want is to meet a minimum standard and then either never look at it again, which some states, once you pass the police academy, you never have to take another PT test. That's fine. It's not a test, it's a standard. Am I upholding that standard? All of those minimum standards are the springboard to push from. They're not the end state in all things. So no matter how well you did, you can always do better the next time. That's the kind of individualized standards we're encouraging you to look for. So what are some of the impediments to developing a high personal standard over and above what the state or your local minimum standard is. The number one thing that we see that prevents personal growth in standards for individuals is ego. So ego, either in not wanting to look bad, so you've identified a skill that you suck at, and you don't work at it because you don't want to do it in front of anybody or ask for any help because you don't want anybody to know that you can't do it. That's an ego problem. The other problem we see is one of comfort. For instance, you're sitting on your toilet watching this and you're like, yeah, you know, I really need to get my stuff together, and I need to raise my PT standards, start working out again, and I need to hit the range, and I need to go to the gym and roll, and I need to start, you know, re-enroll in my jiu-jitsu course, and I need to go take a driving class. I'm kind of interested at driving and I suck. Or in my personal instance, theft investigations have been the bane of my existence for my entire career. Me, I suck at them. I'm not good at them. I've had to work for a long time to get modularly, or that's the wrong word, to get moderately competent at pure property theft investigation stuff. I'm not interested in it. It's never been a thing for me. I understand that those are individualized victims and I want to serve those folks. I've just always been better at investigating crimes against people. So instead of being comfortable and just ignoring the problem, it took me a while of kicking my own ass to get good at it. And I'm still mediocre at it at best, but I've tried, right? So avoiding comfort. Comfort is always the enemy. And the combination of comfort and ego are guaranteed to keep you at the minimum standard, which means you are living the mediocre life. And that is not what your community expects of you. Mediocrity is a functional failure in an emergency. It's what leads to bad decisions. The time to prepare for an emergency is today, right now, while you're comfortable. Not when you're tired, cold, afraid, unsure of what to do, not confident in what needs to be done next. That's not the time to fix those problems. That's why we're encouraging you to develop and maintain some individualized standards. So the primary challenge, or the primary reason I want to encourage you to not rely on minimum standards, is they create mediocre outcomes. They create negative outcomes, and they're not reliably serving your community. I want you to maximize your individualized standards because it creates a benefit for everyone involved. You get more benefit through more confidence and more abilities. That also could open up career opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be available. It helps your leaders. It benefits the leadership of the agency because they come to know that they can rely on you for things, especially if you meeting these high standards doesn't also result in you becoming a dick. If you get really good at shooting and you go out to the range with your teammates and you just spend the whole time dogging them that they aren't as good as you, you're not helping. You're actually hurting. You're hurting the mission of the organization. You're not just being a dick. So it benefits your leadership in being able to rely on you to not only perform this to a higher standard than the minimum, but it makes them able to rely on you to mentor somebody else, even if you're not a training officer. If you watched one of our previous videos talking about leadership, you are a leader. You are responsible for being capable of leading people. So it also has a benefit to the agency as a whole because it not only reduces liability, which is far over talked about, but it does apply in this context. The more capable you are and the higher your individualized standard is, the less likely you are to make a decision that creates an unnecessary liability circumstance. Are there some things that we do that are inherently liable? That driving fast with lights and sirens, pulling guns on people, rolling around on the ground fighting with people, those create liability circumstances. Your agency, especially good agencies, even if they're small, the level of education available to executives at the police level is actually pretty good. A lot of those guys get some really good education and they're wise. Maximize what you're doing for them by minimizing the amount of problems that you bring to their desk by raising your individualized standards. highestly and most importantly is higher individual standards on your part raises the benefit to the public that your presence provides them. The higher your individual standards are, the more capable you will be in an emergency, and that's when you count. The fact that you can come and take a theft report, like, awesome. Like, if you can recover that item, even better. But when they call you for a personal safety emergency, you need to be able to show up and lay it down on command. And the only way to be able to do that is by growing, developing, and constantly pushing your individualized standard. So given the standards discussion that we're beginning with this video, our next guest on the podcast, probably not in succession, but the next guest we have about standards is going to be Justin Dial. If you don't know who Justin is, look him up. He's a phenomenal teacher. Long-time Marine Corps veteran, officer level. He's still a good Marine. I'm joking about officers for those of you who weren't ever in the military. Phenomenal guy, stood up a bunch of programs, and he is the expert that I have ever met in the thinking process for wise standards. Like, why does a standard exist? What are we trying to derive from this standard? Both at the external level from an agency or a unit, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how we identify, create, and grow standards within ourselves individually. Because standards aren't met, they're constantly strived. We're always on the individual level, we are always looking to push performance forward, but doing it smartly, not wasting resourcing and effort. If I'm spending all of my time and resources trying to get a better build drill, what am I not focusing on? So we're going to talk about topics like that. Justin's a great dude. You guys are going to get a lot out of us having him on the show. So as soon as we can get that organized, we're going to get it done and get it up. We've got some other shows coming up soon too. We really hope you guys had a great holiday. I know that our drunken editor hates it when I talk about time-specific things, but we are very thankful for all of you who are donors and all of you who are watching, because you're donating in a way too, just by giving us the views. So we greatly appreciate it. Guys, the purpose of this video was to encourage you to seek out a reasonable, contextually based individual standard for your performance in whatever it is you're doing, but especially for the cops, because I'm watching you, especially you. Yeah. So I'm expecting you guys, and we're trying to encourage you guys to develop a standard based on your community's needs, what you're capable of doing, the minimum standards where you work, and look at progressing your abilities based on pushing your standard individually even higher. And then when you reach that, pull some people behind you, help them out, encourage people. Dog cussing people because they can't do what you can do is stupid, and that's egotistical. That's not how we roll. That's not the vibe we're looking for, and it's not what we do as good cops for one another. So let's not drop chalk lines, as Justin calls it. I'm able to do this, so this is the new standard. Everybody who doesn't meet it is a piece of shit. That is not the attitude to have, and it's not how we're going to develop and continue to grow the capabilities of the small town and rural law enforcement officer. Guys, we appreciate you watching. If you're willing to help us out in our mission, we really do need the small donation program, and we need you to participate in it. So we'd appreciate a $20 a month donation. All you got to do is hit tf70.org/donate. Fill it out, help us out. Guys, it's truly impactful, that $20 a month donation is. The more of them we can get, the more we can do. I'm filming today at the campus, the first campus for Task Force 70 here in Middle Tennessee. Officers from all over the nation will be traveling here to train. This is a pretty heavy lift to get the rural and small town law enforcement officer specific training facility built that we need in order to do this mission. And all the support you guys have been giving and continue to give, and the support that we're asking you for, will make this a reality. So guys, we appreciate you. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.